Welcome. My name is Lynn Smith. I'm Executive Director of Pioneer Bluffs, and we are just thrilled you're here and very happy to have Jeanne Hatcher here. You know, I have to tell you, she and I talked last year about her doing the Hatcher story, and she started working on it last year. And I have met with her several times, and she really worked hard to get everything put together. And her passion and caring for telling this important story just comes through. And so I'm really excited to introduce to you Jeanne Hatcher.
Thank you, Lynn. She's been a wonder for me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. I hope the next few minutes you find our small story interesting and enlightening as we try to pull some highlights together, which involved the family surrounding the Fox Creek Ranch. That picture is self-explanatory. And of course, the waterfall that Bill's dad named it after. 6 generations ago, in 1897, the William Hatcher family from Sycamore, Illinois, moved to Emporia, Kansas. Having worked with the Santa Fe Railroad in Illinois, William was offered a job to lease the Santa Fe stockyards, located about a half-mile east and across the railroad tracks from the picture you are now seeing, which is on Albert Street and Highway 50 on the west side of Emporia. He was in charge of receiving cattle where by law they were unloaded, watered, fed, rested before reloading and moving on rail car to their final destination, generally Kansas City. Tragically, in 1906, Mr. Hatcher was hit over the head by an unknown assailant while checking cattle cars and died a few days later, leaving his wife, Catherine, his mother, Mary, father, Isaac, and children, Isaac, William Paul, Mary, Catherine, and Robert. Their home was on 1104 State Street in Emporia. After his death, his wife sold the home and bought a farm north of Emporia where she and William's parents raised her family. Of the 5 children, the second oldest, William Paul, who used his second name Paul, as seen in this picture, took up the mantle of livestock farming ancestors and actually put himself through 2 years of a college at Emporia State Teachers College, raising and selling swine, and was known on the football squad as Pig Hatcher. While still farming the homestead, he bought an interest in the livestock sale barn, which sold mules, cattle, and horses. And of course, at this time, mules and workhorses were used as a tractor would be used today. A few years later, Paul took in a partner, Ami Peak, and the company became Peak and Hatcher. This venture, which at one time was the second largest sale barn in Kansas, lasted for nearly 50 years and was where Paul's son, William, referred to as Bill hereafter, was to learn the cattle business. Paul leased Flint Hills grass to fatten his cattle and had purchased more land around Emporia for his agriculture ventures of farming. And these pictures are inside the sale barn where they were selling, I think, mules at this time, and up above were the clerks and the auctioneer. Can you go back one or not? No, the next one. Oh, the tall man with the black hat on is Bill's dad, Paul. And this was his place of business. In 1923, Paul married his college sweetheart, Helen McCahan, and they took a train to Council Grove, Kansas, to the cottage house for their honeymoon. He and Helen raised 2 children, William, or Bill, and little sister Pauline, on the homestead just north of Emporia, where Billy rode his pony to school and Pauline rode her pony anytime she could and as fast as she could. There's Bill on his pony, the one he rode to school. And he's helping sister out there. This is Pauline and her dad, Paul. In front of the house they moved to when Bill was 12 years old, which was south across the river on Lincoln Street. And there's another picture of Pauline. Pauline attended K-State and moved to California and raised 6 wonderful children. Bill stuck around and helped his father with whatever daily challenges needed to be met. This is a clipping of the sale of the ranch in the Emporia Gazette. In 1946, a ranch at that time owned by the Wood brothers, David Paul, one of the Wood brothers, whose father was William L. Wood, mother Zelphia, and whose father was the famous Sam Wood, put his Wood Ranch, located 4.5 miles north of Strong City on Highway 177, up for sale as he was facing bankruptcies. And that was not unusual forever, I think, in the cattle business. A real estate friend of Paul Hatcher's alerted him of this land, and a deal was made with him and Pekin Hatcher. $48 an acre was the price, and just over 2,800 acres were purchased. David Paul had inherited this ranch from his father, William. It was noted that this was the highest price given for grassland ever. Sadly, the house and barn burned in a grass fire several years ago. This is a picture of the house which Bill's cousin, Jack Rankin, who's a watercolorist, painted several years ago. And there's the barn. At this time, Paul decided to rename the ranch to Fox Creek Ranch. The ranch was increased several times as neighboring landowners wanted to sell their property, making the ranch area all one piece of land, while Highway 177 running through it. It might be of interest to some that naming pastures after the sellers is how we ranchers describe a certain section or sections of land when in need of knowing where one is working. For example, we have the Fleming, the Ultimus, the Parks, and the Roberts, which was named after the famous Roberts rodeo family of Strong City. And of course, the ranch which William Wood put together was bought mostly from landowners who were awarded land from the government in payment of service in the war with Mexico and the War of 1812, etc., which abstracts were signed by the presidents, including Lincoln and Andrew Jackson. And I have one there of Andrew Jackson near the bottom. Another note of interest might be the partnership Paul entered into with another well-known name in Chase County and surrounding counties, the Jones brothers of the Lebo area. In the 30s, they spread out their operation by buying 40,000-acre ranch in the panhandle of Texas. Because of many transactions over the years with Paul and his character and expertise in the cattle business, he was contacted to see if he would lease the ranch, and consequently they entered into a contract with Paul to lease the land as long as he wanted. These brothers, of course, are the Jones brothers, whom you see in this pic, looking over the cattle in the Texas panhandle. And, of course, that's Walter and Evan. I couldn't get many pictures of them. Since they had no children, they left the ranch in a trust which people and organizations have benefited for 60 years in several counties, including Chase County. The Hatcher family leased this land for over 40 years, where a herd of cattle was raised and 500-pound calves were weaned and sent to Kansas to the Fox Creek Ranch for summer grazing. The Hatcher family had a partner in Texas, and his name was J.O. Wells. After he died, his son-in-law, Pecos Anderson, had it for many years with us. And then after he died, Jim Bill Anderson, his son, still has the ranch leased. Meanwhile, back at the Fox Creek Ranch, things were thriving with a hired man as manager and was often assisted by Bill and his best buddy and co-worker, Lee Bryant, when haying, working cattle, planting and harvesting corn silage, checking summer cattle herds, and fencing, etc., were needed. Of course, summering cattle and checking the cattle herds was the main business. And with the ranch next door to the Z-Bar, or as known today as the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve, they neighbored for 50 years plus. And that is helping each other with each other's roundups. Bill became a full-time worker after graduating from Emporia State Teachers College in 1954. As an offensive lineman, he lettered 4 years at Emporia State Teachers College. No, he didn't have a face mask, and the helmet was made of leather. He did this after playing six-man football in high school. His degree earned was in biology. He is also proud of serving in the Navy after high school, when at that time, one could join for 1 year of service and 4 years of reserve, which he fulfilled. He is forever grateful that Eisenhower ended the war before he was deployed to Korea. This is Bill on horse Jim, and that's actually taken in Swope Park in Cottonwood Falls, as they were there to ride in the rodeo parade. Back then, they didn't even have stock trailers, so they loaded the horses in a truck, tried to find a hill they could back up to where they could jump them out. Bill drove out from the sale barn to help with these operations for many years and was sometimes joined by wife, me, married in 1966, and later 2 boys, Gary and Matt. Here we are on face on horses in the creek. Okay, here's a picture of Bill and the little boys on a hay track. And of course, that is Bill, and Gary's about 11, and I think Matt 5. And here, of course, is Bill and Gary working with an old manual cattle chute. Thank goodness for the others today. Not only did they work, but enjoyed fishing and joining on horseback when roundups occurred in the fall. With the division of the sale barn in 1975, the Fox Creek Ranch was the main Kansas focus, and Bill became the sole manager with his father when his father, Paul, died in 1980, and Helen, his mother, in 1984. A few years later, Bill and I purchased half of the ranch from sister Pauline. From the mid-'80s until 2002, Bill and I purchased cattle in the fall to background on the ranch, that is weaning, immunizing, branding, feeding, doctoring, to grow them into calves ready for that lush blue stem grass in the pastures. Of course, when not in school, Gary and Matt helped with all phases, learning the work as well as roping on their own trained horses. And Matt specialized in breaking and training horses. After 48 years for Bill and 20 years for me, we gave up buying and selling our own cattle and leased the ranch to Gary, east side of the ranch, and Matt, west side, as each own children are joining in their family cattle businesses. As leasers, we allow full season grazing as well as double stocking as long as recommendations of K-State are followed. Not to be put out to pasture too soon, but not having the worry of cattle business, Bill and I had summer jobs putting up hay until just a few years ago. Of course, that's me and Bill. Gary and his wife, Ronna, have 2 children, both involved with cattle businesses. Daughter Jordan married and together with Austin raised show calves and helps with roundups. By the way, they were blessed with a new boy born about 6 weeks ago. Here they are with their cattle in the background. And they're very good show people. They win a lot of those things. Son Craig works his own cattle venture and helps his father backgrounding, etc., and he's soon to be married in August. Here he is standing by his horse. And he loves to rope, and here he is chasing a cat. Matt and his 2 girls, Haddison, 16, and Boots, other name Alexis, 18, who are here on the front row with their grandpa and their dad behind them. With his wife, Angela, a registered nurse. All 3 girls are deeply embroiled in the cattle horse ranching business, processing, herding, and checking cattle. The girls also started a herd from 4-H heifers and learned to check pregnancies. And the next one is Hattie. And here's part of their cow herd a few years ago. There was a newborn that I got out there and caught. And as you can see in this pic, when the men are busy, the girls will process very effectively. Here's Boots cutting off horns. Hattie shoving them in. And Angela is giving shots and whatever needs to be done at the head. And I push them through. We call this girl power. In 2017, our ranch was honored with a recognition with 9 other ranches as one of the oldest family-owned ranches in Chase County and at the 75th anniversary of the Strong City Rodeo. And now, years later, Angela, our daughter-in-law, is on the board, and at the rodeo, Boots often carries the opening flags for our country's military forces. The only thing better about this picture is we'd have great military music going on behind her ride. At our ages, we are still healthy enough to mow lawns at the ranch and small odd jobs. But we are brought so much joy when resting in our easy chairs looking out our backyard windows at the deer, turkeys, and birds that seem to appear very regularly. Bill's favorite job is keeping feeders full for the many beautiful songbirds, and as many have heard Bill say when he asked about the cattle business, he says, quote, "I do not feed cattle anymore, I feed birds." We have 35 ponds, which are landings for all kinds of ducks and geese, and occasionally see a bald eagle traveling through. Our love of taking Jeep rides through the hills is only surpassed by the amazing sunrises and sunsets God provides for us in the place we call the Flint Hills. Following are pictures of some of the last couple years roundup and shipping cattle, as well as a few views of the ranch. This is kind of out in front of our house. They brought them in from the north. I guess Hattie's waving. Matt's going to get the gate. And Boots is pushing them down. Whoops, looks like Bill needed some help. Hattie's getting the gate. They're down in the pins now, and the girls are sorting. They have to bring so many out at a time. The truckers have so many that they want at a time. So that's part of their job. Here, Boots is cutting one that's trying to get away. Here they are relaxing. And of course, going up the chute into the truck. If we had sound, it's kind of neat to hear all the clutter going on. These are just some pictures that we like of the ranch. Here's one of the ponds. Angela took this one day after a storm went through. That's over the horse barn right there. And of course we try to burn every year if possible. There's Matt starting the fire. And this was shortly after a burn, and just to see how God lays that grass comes back and lays the carpet down. Another roundup. And I want to finish with this poem. It's called Flint Hills by Charles Cowan. I don't know if any of you know Charles Cowan. He was a truck driver for Jeanne Hatcher for many years, and he loved to write poetry. I took a trail that winds through rugged hills, soft tinted with the emerald of spring, where deep down gullies muddy water spills and wild birds sing. These rugged hills are armored with hard flint, beneath a camouflage of blue stem green. And the farmers' plows have hardly made a dent in this wild scene. Here wild things wander, coyote, rattlesnakes, scared prairie dogs, bright pheasants, Hereford kine grow fat to grace the table with thick steaks. These hills are mine. They're mine and God's, unspoiled by man machines. Though scarred with rock-strewn gullies, which the rains make canyons of, these once knew small ravines, wild water lanes. Alone here on my blanket, let me lie, with ropes strung around to keep the snakes away. Beneath a spangled tent, the star-pocked sky, till dawns the day. Before I ask for questions, I just wanted to mention some of the employees at the ranch through the years. The first manager was Jack Hayden, his son then Bill Hayden, Bob Zimmerman, Robert Fillmore, Marion Fillmore, Jay Williams, Mike Swift. They were all full-time help. And of course, we had a lot of part-time help in the summer.
Westward we go, toward the last buffalo, to the high plains of sturdy short grass, where the great southern